This is going to be a follow-up video to my previous one. My previous video being about why you can't just yell at people that the rebel flag is racist. But what this one's going to be about is something associated to that, and that is, was the Civil War fought over basically just slavery? That's the question. Was it just about slavery, or was there more to it? Or was there enough more to it for it to be about things besides just slavery? Now, one argument that you hear a lot is that the Civil War was fought over more than just slavery, that yeah, that was a part of it, but there was this culture divide going on, and it was about state rights, and that there were economics in play there, about the economic differences between the North and the South, and that it was a culmination of all these different things. Well, I'm going to argue that all of those other things all end up going back to slavery one way or another. They're all rooted at that. Now, I'm going to be reading a number of things here from people at the time of the Civil War. Some of these are not going to be particularly nice things. They're actually going to be pretty bad. Just, I think you have to actually read and actually hear and be exposed to this type of stuff and not just hide it because it's unpleasant. That's the only way you're going to learn from it. So the first person I'm going to quote here is going to be Senator Charles Sumner, who was around at the time. He was not on the pro-slavery side, so we'll see what he has to say here. There are two apparent rudiments to this war. One is slavery and the other is state rights. But the latter is only a cover for the former. If slavery were out of the way, there would be no trouble from state rights. The war then is for slavery and nothing else. It is an insane attempt to vindicate by arms the lordship which has been already asserted in debate. With madcap audacity, it seeks to install this barbarism at the truest civilization. Slavery is declared to be the cornerstone of the new edifice. You have Abraham Lincoln when speaking to Alexander Stephens, who would be the Vice President of the Confederacy. You think slavery is right and should be extended, while we think slavery is wrong and ought to be restricted. That, I suppose, is the rub. It certainly is the only substantial difference between us. And you're like, yeah, well, of course, Lincoln and Sumner said that the Civil War was only just about slavery. I mean, they weren't in favor of the Civil War or the Confederacy. So of course they would say that that was all it was about and that everything else was a ruse. Well, let's go ahead and go to some of the other things that people on the other side of it said. This is going to be a quote here from Alexander Stephens. You remember in the Sumner quote that he mentioned it, slavery being the cornerstone of the new edifice. Well, this is what Sumner was referencing to in Alexander Stephens' famous cornerstone speech. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth. So, yeah, okay, he's pretty brutal here about what he thinks about slavery, and not just slavery, but black people in general. Why stop with the Vice President of the Confederacy? Let's move on to the big man himself, Jefferson Davis. This is something that he wrote after the war, but still an interesting quote here to show what his mentality was. The servile instincts of slaves rendered them contented with their lot, and their patient toil blessed the land and their abode with unmeasurable riches. Their strong local and personal attachment secured faithful service. Never was there happier dependence of labor and capital on each other. The tempter came like the serpent of Eden and decoyed them with the magic word of freedom. He put arms in their hands and trained their humble humble but emotional natures to deeds of violence and bloodshed and sent them out to devastate their benefactors. Okay, yeah, Jeff, well, when you put it like that, yeah. So we got like what the leaders of the Confederacy thought that this was about. Let's go ahead and just go down here. We're going to look at each of the states when they left the United States and decided to join the Confederacy. They made a declaration about that. That's something you would expect them to do. Let's just start literally. I'm going to take a few different states here. We're going to start literally at the beginning of these declarations, and let's just see how far we have to go into these things before they start getting into slavery. We'll start off with the state of Georgia. The people of Georgia, having dissolved their political connection with the government of the United States of America, present to their Confederates and the world the causes which have led to the separation. All right, they're just going to start off with a thing like we're going to list our causes. All right, let's see where they go from here. For the last 10 years, we have had numerous and serious causes of complaint against our non-slave holding Confederate states with reference to the subject of African slavery. Wow, okay, it took them literally 2 sentences to get to slavery. I mean, like 2. Well, that's not good. Let's look at some other states. How about Mississippi? In the momentous step which our state has taken of dissolving its connection with the government of which we so long formed a part, it is but just that we should declare our prominent reasons which have induced our course. They're going to be like Georgia here, one little sentence like, we're going to state our reasons. All right, let's see what we got next. Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery. Well, okay. Yeah, they just got to that right there. Like, once again, second sentence of the declaration here. The institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. Its labor supplies the product which constitutes by far the largest and most important portions of commerce of the earth. These products are peculiar to the climate verging on the tropical regions, and by an imperious law of nature, none but the black race can bear exposure to the tropical sun. These products have become necessities of the world, and a blow at slavery is a blow at commerce and civilization. Okay, yeah, that's not good here. Gonna go to South Carolina. Now, South Carolina starts off referencing a convention that they had a number of years prior to the Civil War, so that is the dates that they are referencing in here. The people of the state of South Carolina in convention assembled on the 26th day of April AD 1852 declared that the frequent violations of the Constitution of the United States by the federal government and its encroachments upon the reserved rights of the states fully justified this state in the withdrawing from the federal union. Semicolon. But in deference to the opinions and wishes of the other slave-holding states, she forbore at that time to exercise this right. Since that time, these encroachments have continued to increase, and further forbearance ceases to be a virtue. All right, so here we go. Pretty much the second sentence, they're just going straight into slavery again. Maybe the first sentence, if that semicolon makes the thing one big gigantic run-on sentence. Okay, how about Virginia? The people of Virginia, in their ratification of the Constitution of the United States of America, adopted by them in a convention on the 25th day of June in the year of our Lord 1788, having declared that the powers granted under the said Constitution were derived from the people of the United States and might be resumed whensoever the same should be perverted to their injury and oppression. Semicolon. And the federal government, having perverted said powers, not only to the injury of the people of Virginia, but to the oppression of the southern slave-holding states. Again, okay, right here, the first or second sentence, depending on how you want to view things with that semicolon, took like 2 sentences for them to get into slave-holding states being the big, major, important thing here. All right. How about my home state of Texas? What did Texas have to say on this? The government of the United States, by certain joint resolutions bearing date the 1st day of March in the year AD 1845, proposed to the Republic of Texas, then a free and sovereign independent nation, We have to point that out like every time that we can, that we were once a free and independent sovereign nation. The annexation of the latter to the former as one of the co-equal states thereof. The people of Texas, by deputies in convention assembled on the 4th day of July of the same year, asserted to and accepted said proposals and formed a constitution for the proposed state, upon which the 29th day of December in the same year, said state was formally admitted into the Confederated Union. All right, so we're going along here. We talked a bit. It's interesting that Texas is choosing to refer to the United States as a Confederated Union, which isn't necessarily wrong, but maybe they were trying to make some sort of wordplay in there that they were in a confederacy and just going to another confederacy. I'm not sure. But anyway, we've gone on a good bit here and haven't gotten into anything racist yet. Texas abandoned her separate national existence and consented to become one of the Confederated Union to promote her welfare, ensure domestic tranquility, and secure more substantially the blessings of peace and liberty to her people. She was received into the Confederacy with her own constitution under the guarantee of the federal constitution and a compact of annexation that she should enjoy these blessings. Right? You're doing pretty good here, Texas. She was received as a Commonwealth holding, maintaining and protecting the institution known as Negro slavery. Ugh, Texas, you had to go there too. The servitude of the African to the white race within her limits, a relation that had existed from the first settlement of her wilderness by the white race, and which her people intended should exist in all future time. Her institutions and geographical positions established the strongest ties between her and other slave-holding states of the Confederacy. And actually, if you want to go a little bit further down into what Texas has to say on the matter, on the same declaration here, we hold as undeniable truths that the governments of the various states and of the Confederacy itself were established exclusively by the white race, for themselves and their posterity, that the African race had no agency in their establishment, that they were rightfully held and regarded as an inferior and dependent race, and in that condition only could their existence in this country be rendered beneficial or tolerable. That in this free government all white men are, and of right ought to be entitled to equal civil and political rights, that the servitude of the African race as existing in these states is mutually beneficial to both bond and free, and is abundantly authorized and justified by the experience of mankind and the revealed will of the Almighty Creator. I mean, if God is for it, how can y'all be against it? As recognized by all Christian nations, while the destruction of the existing relations between the two races, as advocated by our sectional enemies, would bring inevitable calamities upon both and desolation upon the 15 slave-holding states. You could see in each of these that they pretty much, first thing in stating their reasons, go straight to slavery. We're not talking about a little bit down in it, they talk about it, and they put it in there a little bit. It's like the first thing that they get to when they talk about why they're doing this whole Civil War thing. And when they talk about it further, they get pretty damn racist. Where am I going with this, and what does this have to do with my previous video about the Confederate flag? Okay. I know that it has been used for years as like a symbol of the South and representing the South. Looking at the history that I can as a amateur historian, because I am very much a amateur historian. I'm probably not even properly a historian. I'm just like a guy that likes to dabble in history. When we look through that, we can see that a lot of this idea of the Confederacy being about more than just slavery. Some of it started during Reconstruction afterwards, and it was just a way for the South to kind of hold on to their dignity and say, well, it was about other stuff and we had a righteous cause. And the North kind of let them go ahead and go with it because it made Reconstruction easier and made both sides coming back together a bit easier. So they're like, hey, if it makes them happy, we'll let them do that. And then it just kind of kept on building. About the time that a lot of the Confederate veterans started dying off at the later part of the 1800s and the early 1900s, you started seeing a lot of the memorials and things coming up, and this is what was really trying to push that these guys that were dying off now had a noble cause that they were for there, that the whole thing, you know, that there was a noble cause to it. And the flag started being used to represent that noble cause. Well, that noble cause is a myth. It's not accurate. It was just done to make them feel better about it. And now we've had that noble cause myth passed on for generations and generations down the line, and it keeps being ingrained in the culture. And really, I just want everybody to go back and just look at what that was all coming from, and that the rebel flag came from the Confederacy. It came from the people in the rebellion. This is what it originated at. This was not something that represented the South that was taken and turned and mutated into something vile. It was vile to start with. You can look at what it was originally about. And then the question you have to ask, since this symbol originated in the Confederacy, and since it originated as a cause for maintaining slavery, is it a wise idea to use that to represent your culture now? Is that a symbol that you want representing you, and is it a good idea to use that symbol? And that's what I'm going to leave you with, just to think about that and answer that. So if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and a like, or a thumbs down. If you think I'm way off base, you can leave any of your comments that you have about any of this in the comments. And even though my channel is on a very different subject, usually you're welcome to take a look at my other videos to see if any of them interest you. And you can subscribe to the channel and click the little bell notification so that you can catch all the videos that I post and not miss anything. I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G, and we'll see you next time.